Hello and welcome to the Crystal Palace podcast. I'm Alfonso Greenbrook, and in today's podcast I'll be looking over the game against Cardiff City by bringing you my match review, player rankings and my man of the match. As well as this, I'm also going to bring you interviews with Roy Hodgson, Wilfried Zaha and Andros Townsend after the game. So let's begin. An entertaining game in Wales saw Palace emerge victorious thanks to goals from Wilfried Zaha, Michy, Batshuayi and Andros Townsend. Crystal Palace made the trip to Cardiff City knowing that they'd be in for a tough afternoon, with the Bluebirds playing for their Premier League survival. After the goalless game at Selhurst Park last time out for the Eagles against Everton, Roy Hodgson made 4 changes to the side. Jordan Ayew made his first start for Palace since the 30th of January. Joe Ward came in at left back again just like he did in the recent Arsenal victory, with Andros Townsend and Michy Batshuayi completing the personnel changes for the Eagles. Josh Murphy, inside the first minute, let the Eagles know that they were going to be in for the evening that they very much expected, with the winger's ambitious effort from outside the box skipping across the face of Vincenzo Gaeta's goal and clipping the outside of the post. Palace replied to the Bluebirds' quick opening though, winning a corner which found Andros Townsend at the back post. The winger created some space with some lovely footwork before finding Martin Kelly's head with a cross, which brought about Palace's first effort on target. The opening minutes were played with some real tenacity as Cardiff looked for the opener to settle their nerves. The way in which the game was being played was epitomised by Victor Camarasa being forced off early for the hosts after a heavy impact collision with Joe Ward. Moments before the creative midfielder left the play though, Palace had another shot on target. A delightful flick from Batshuayi found Ayew with some space a few yards inside the Cardiff half. The forward played it to Townsend who pulled off a trademark cut inside shot, but Neil Everidge got down well. The next 15 minutes passed without too much of note as both teams tussled for possession in the middle of the pitch. But the warning signs for Cardiff were there that their former on-loan player Wilfried Zaha was eyeing the goal that would see him reach 10 Premier League goals for the Eagles for the first time in a season. A solid 50-50 tackle from Ayew saw the Ghanaian surge forward before knocking the ball back to Luka Milivojevic in the centre circle, with the Serbian international slotting a perfect ball between the right back and the right centre back of the Bluebirds back line to find an on-rushing Zaha. The Ivory Coast international cut inside and sent a low drive down to Edridge's right hand side post. However, the shot was just the wrong side to open the scoring. The one-time Cardiff winger did get his goal though, just 2 minutes later. Starting the move, Zaha drove forward, played the ball out to Townsend, who had now switched over to the left-hand side of the midfield to unsettle Cardiff, with Townsend then returning the ball to Zaha on the edge of the box. It was then all down to the work of the tricky Zaha that saw Palace take the lead. Zaha lost Aaron Goodinson with ease on the edge of the box before sending a low shot, reminiscent of the one 2 minutes earlier, only this time it went the right side of the Cardiff goal. That goal marks Zaha's 10th goal of the Premier League season and also means that the Eagles icon is now enjoying his best ever season in front of goal for Palace. The joy of Roy Hodgson's side taking the lead was a short-lived one, with Martin Kelly, after spotting the danger from Buchanan's cross, unfortunately turned the ball into his own net on 31 minutes. Palace responded well from the almost instant setback, and in the 39th minute Hodgson's boys were back in charge of proceedings. A lovely move down the left saw Zaha find Milivojevic, with the captain crossing into Batshuayi before the Belgium international played a quick 1-2 with his strike partner Ayew, which created plenty of time and space for Batshuayi to rifle Palace's second goal of the game into the top corner of the goal. Cardiff again rallied and tried to be, at the very least, level come half-time. However, Gaeta was having none of it and tipped over superbly from Bruno Echo Manga's header in the 42nd minute after a deep corner from the Bluebirds. The final bit of noteworthy action in an entertaining 45 minutes nearly resulted in Palace going in with a 2-goal cushion at half-time. Townsend was getting greater joy down the left-hand side, and another cross from the Englishman found Batshuayi 6 yards out. However, the on-loan striker's diving header was superbly saved by Edridge. The second half started with several Aaron Wan-Bissaka slide tackles, which demonstrated to the Eagles that Cardiff weren't giving up on their Premier League status just yet. And in the 55th minute, Murphy really should have tested Gaeta. However, the former Norwich City man scuffed his shot wide of the post despite being unmarked at the back post. The next Cardiff chance fell to Murphy too, when in the 62nd minute he sent a bending effort towards the bottom corner of the Palace goal. However, with Gaeta heading down to save his shot, he took a deflection in the busy Palace box, but the Spaniard was able to reorganise himself mid-dive to keep Palace in the lead. Cardiff were now going for the jungler, and in the 64th minute, substitute Kenneth Zaha went clean for on goal, thanks to a defence-splitting pass from Bobby Reid, but out came Gaeta, teasing the striker to shoot for his legs, and yet again the number 31 for Palace stifled the attempt with a smart save. As the game ticked into the 70th minute, Palace launched a counter-attack down Cardiff's left-hand side. However, this attack was a one-man band, with Townsend sprinting down the right, cutting in, and as he's done so often in his Eagles career, finding the back of the net thanks to the inside of Cardiff's post. Cardiff came close to making it a more nervy final 15 minutes for the Eagles. However, James McArthur retreated superbly to clear an effort off the line and keep Palace's 2-goal margin intact. The game ultimately broke out into a game of attack v attack as Cardiff pushed for at least a point, all whilst Hodgson's attacking quartet of Zaha, Townsend, Max Meyer and Bakary Sakho sensed a chance to trouble a stretched Bluebirds rear guard as they pushed more and more players forward. There was a real feeling around the ground that there was plenty more goals in this game for both sides, and when Gaeta saved well from Mendes Lang, the goal scoring was seemingly over. However, as the game ticked into injury time, Bobby Reid curled one into the bottom corner of the net, setting up a cagey final few minutes as Cardiff needed a point to take their chances of Premier League survival into the final game week. It didn't happen though, with Palace bagging another away day win that confirmed Cardiff City's relegation to the Championship. So now I'm going to move on to my player ratings, but before I start, don't forget you can follow us on both Twitter and Facebook at Crystal Palace for all the latest Palace news. So if you are someone like me who does like to follow a vast array of Palace accounts on both Twitter and Facebook, then of course follow our accounts at Crystal Palace, obviously if you want a place to get all the latest Palace news. Now alongside that, we obviously post a number of different things on the account, or on both of the accounts, and that obviously includes transfer news, so especially sort of coming towards the end of the season now, and obviously with the summer transfer window due to open in a few months' time, there's going to be many rumours, well, there could be even hundreds of rumours, about players coming in or out, so if you do want to keep up to date with all the latest transfer goings, whether they be players coming in or players coming out, of course you can follow us on both Twitter and Facebook for that, and then alongside sort of your general club news, we also post interviews as well. So whether that be with players, with management, with anyone really who has something to say about the club, we also post that on there. And I would say we're quite good at actually sourcing these news articles, these interviews, these transfer rumours as soon as they come out. So if you want a place sort of to get it quite regularly and to get it sort of as soon as it comes out, then of course follow us on both our Twitter and Facebook pages. Now alongside that, obviously there's a few guys there running the page, and before the game they might give you their opinions, what they're thinking before the game, maybe have a few polls, and of course after the game they also give you their instant match reaction. So if you are someone who wants another account to follow, mainly so you can get sort of a different opinion, obviously I don't run the page but the guys on there certainly do, and I would say they do a quite good job of that. So if you want a place to get all the latest news as well as someone else's opinion, just so you can sort of have a broader view, let's say after the game and before games and things like that, of course you can follow our Twitter page in particular for that. Now another great place to share opinions is in the YouTube comments, so if you are listening to the podcast on YouTube, then do feel free to drop a comment below the video with your player ratings where you rate your players' performances from 1 to 10, and that is of course with 10 being the best. Now the main reason I want you to do that is that I've got my opinion of the game, how I rate the players' performances, but actually what I'd rather you guys do is actually comment below with your player ratings, and that's just so I can read through them and compare how you thought the players performed to how I thought they performed, and of course if there are any differences we can also feel free to sort of discuss them, think about parts of the game we may have missed, and of course alongside that, even if you don't want to do your player ratings, just comment below with your general views of the game, whether you're a Cardiff City fan, the disappointment of relegation, or whether you're a Palace fan, sort of discussing why we're so much better away from home than we are at home. Obviously all different things that you want to discuss, of course feel free to do that as well, and much the same as you put in your player ratings so that I can read through them and compare it to my opinion, is much the same with just general comments about the game. If you've got something you think I've missed or something you want to share, also comment that below, because of course I read through all the comments, and if you ever want to have a discussion or have a question for me, of course feel free to drop that below as well. And like I said, it isn't just for me to read through it and compare my opinion, but also any other fans who find themselves listening to the podcast, whether they be Cardiff or Palace fans, they can of course read through it as well. But if you do want to follow, any of the social media pages that I've just mentioned, or of course join our Facebook group, and do check all links that will be in the description below. But I'm now going to move on to my player ratings, starting to go with Vicente Gaeta, who I'm going to give a 7 overall. Now Gaeta's performance was very similar to his performance recently, where actually he was quite key to us actually getting the result in the game, and it was just because, well, simply down to the fact that he made crucial saves at crucial times throughout the game. And you've got to look at sort of towards the end of the game where particularly when we were 2-1 up, obviously Cardiff were having a few chances which could have got it back to 2-2. And of course, when we got that 2-goal lead at 3-1, we had to just make sure we could protect it. And even though we went on to concede and the game finished 3-2, the fact that Gaeta, like he's done in so many times in recent weeks, the fact that he made these crucial saves at crucial moments is really what epitomises, how good his performances have been recently. And I do think the 7 overall is a fair result. But rather than going into his performance, because other than one save in particular which sticks into my mind, where obviously he got down low, down to his left hand side, and obviously tipped the ball onto the post, and of course went out. Aside from that, there wasn't really any saves I could pick out in particular and go, that was fantastic. It's just the fact that whenever he was called upon, he was able to deal with the threat. So moving along about that, I might as well talk just more about his status and his sort of position in the squad, because essentially beginning of the season, obviously Hennessy was starting, and when he was making a few mistakes, people were calling for Gaeta to start, and it was only when Hennessy got injured that Gaeta actually got into the side. But I think it's very obvious to see now that his status as the number 1 is absolutely secured, and this performance once again was one where he just showed his professionalism, got on with the game, and really had a big influence on the side in the fact that he made these crucial saves. And I suppose we've only got one game left of the season now, and the reason I talk about his position as number 1 in the goalkeeping spot is just the fact that because we've got someone who's very comfortable at the back now, who seems to work well, which with sort of whatever back four he has in front of him, now we're at this stage we can actually look forward to next season, more of the same from him in terms of just having that stability at goalkeeper, having someone who's really agile, got good reactions. So actually the reason I bring up his status, and his obviously position as number 1, is just the fact that now, obviously only one game left of the season, hopefully going on to next season he can carry on much the same. And I do think the fact that he's now cemented his place in the side with so many good performances really sort of epitomises what a good goalkeeper is, but also how much of a bargain it was the fact that we got him on a free. Now obviously, like I've said already, he obviously made crucial saves at crucial times throughout the game, but that's been really a theme of all of his performances this season. And I suppose the way you've got to look at it is that the saves he make actually help us win, and it certainly was the fact here. Even though we still went on to, for quite a lot of the game we had a 2-goal lead, even though they sort of clawed it back right at the end of the game to 3-2, there were other chances where Cardiff could have got ahead. Like I've said already, got it back to 2-2 when we were 2-1 up. But the fact that Gaeta makes these saves which win us games, that win us points, like he's done so many times this season, just goes to show how good he was. And that save in particular, sort of where he got down low to his left and obviously parried, or got to the ball, parried it onto the post, and then it went out, was obviously amazing to see. Now the final thing really for me is not necessarily about his performance, but it's the way he reacted to the first goal we conceded. And of course that was Martin Kelly's own goal, which of course we never want to see a player score a own goal. But then when you consider it could have brought, even though Brighton were basically safe, could have brought them closer to relegation. And obviously Martin Kelly, being a Palace player, wanted to bring Brighton down obviously. But even though that was the case, the fact that Gaeta straight away, as soon as the goal went in, went to Martin Kelly, obviously tapped him on the back, just said, don't worry about this, or basically just reassuring him and sort of making sure that mistake didn't get to him, was really great to see. So not only was Gaeta actually making good contributions on the pitch in terms of his saves, but actually in terms of just picking the team up from that mistake, going to Martin Kelly, just having a little word with him after the goal we conceded, was really great to see. So it was nice to see both the saves he made, which were quite good in the game, but also just that sort of reaction to us conceding, and that sort of that little connection he had with Martin Kelly was of course great to see. So once again, Gaeta here, another good performance, even though he conceded 2 goals, obviously none of them his fault. So I do think overall these 7 is a fair result. So I'm now going to move on to the first player in our defence, and that is the right back Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who I'm going to give a 7 overall. Now to be honest, there isn't too much to say about Wan-Bissaka's performance, because it was just a trademark performance from him, in the fact that he done what he had to do defensively, got forward a little bit, tried to give his bit going forward, but mainly defensively he done whatever he could to keep Cardiff out, and certainly done a really good job of that. Now of course I was at the Player of the Season awards, and it was great to see Wan-Bissaka pick up 3 awards. Obviously two in particular, which were both for players of the season. Obviously the fans player of the season, and of course the players player of the season. So he's obviously coming onto this game off the back of getting 3 awards at the awards awards night, and obviously the other week, and it was nice to see him actually continue to do what he does best. That really just sums up his season as a whole, the fact that he's got the awards and he's still able to carry on, even though it's the last few games of the season, still carry on with that high standard that he's set throughout the rest of the season. And I suppose when you've got to look at the opposition, you've got to look at Cardiff, the fact that Wan-Bissaka just dealt with them so well that it just made them sort of look ordinary. That we know that Cardiff, they've got a bit of pace on the attack, and they've got players like Bobby Reid, who scored for Cardiff towards the end of the game. We know they've got players of some quality, obviously not enough to keep them in the Premier League, but the fact that Wan-Bissaka just made them look very ordinary by dealing with them, making a number of sliding challenges, particularly at the beginning of the second half, where he was making sliding challenges here, right here, everywhere, was obviously great to see as well. And I suppose the main thing for me, and this is something we've seen from him a lot this season, is just the fact that he stopped everything that comes his way. So there isn't particularly any one moment I can pick out from the game against Cardiff going, that was fantastic, that was outstanding. But I think overall, the fact that he was just had a very consistent performance, 7 out of 10 throughout the whole game, doing what he had to do to contain Cardiff, was also, basically stopping everything that was coming his way. And whilst he wasn't necessarily as adventurous going forward as he has been previously, obviously with Cardiff fighting for their lives and both teams going sort of all-out attack, he obviously had to be one of these players who stayed calm, showed his professionalism like he always does, and obviously being able to sort of deal with the threat, and I do think he done a fairly good job of that. So once again, Wan-Bissaka here playing at right back, I do think the 7 is a fair result. So I'm now going to move on to the first of our 2 centre backs, and that is of course Scott Dann, who I'm going to give a 6 overall. Now I suppose before I go on to talk about his performance, because it was a fairly good performance, done what he had to do, I might as well go back to what I've talked about briefly in the last sort of few weeks or so, in the fact that it's really quite easy to figure that actually playing both Saka and we've lost both Saka and Tompkins, and they would obviously be our first choice centre-back pairing, but actually it's really easy to forget that we obviously won this game with basically our backup centre-back pairing, because of course Scott Dann and Martin Kelly are both the 4th and 3rd choice centre-backs respectively. So the fact that them two actually performed so well, and it's quite admirably actually, the fact that since we've lost Saka and Tompkins, these two have stepped up, both Dan and Kelly, was of course great to see. So this was a game yet again, yes we did concede 2 goals, albeit the first one was an own goal and the other one was a really great curled strike at the end of the game. Even though that was the case, I do think Dan and Kelly obviously deserve credit, because throughout the majority of the game they've done really well. But I just thought I'd put that in there, and the fact that, yes, I've talked about it briefly recently, but it is really a credit to them that even though they are 3rd and 4th choice centre-back pairing, the fact that they actually performed so well, not necessarily to the quality of Saka and Tompkins, but actually just made up for the loss of them, was obviously really great to see. And I suppose, even though his performance was good, the only reason I've given Dan a 6 as opposed to a 7 is obviously the 2 goals we conceded, albeit the first one wasn't his fault and the second one was a great strike. But I think for me the main reason is just because he got beaten for pace quite a lot of times, but I suppose he makes up for that with his ability in the air, winning these headers, winning aerial duels, and of course from corners as well, being a threat when Luka delivers the ball in. So the fact that he had that experience obviously makes up for the lack of pace he had. But like I've said already, if he had a little bit more pace, was able to keep up with opposition players even better, then he'd be sort of back to his old self. But I do like to think that obviously when he first came back into the team this season he was a bit shaky, but he seems to have finally sort of slotted back into that role after coming back from that long injury. And yes, he's not necessarily completely at his best yet, but he's almost getting back to his old self in terms of having that sort of ability to win the balls in the air, having that ability to obviously restrict the opposition as well as he does, as well as being a threat from corners. So once again here, Scott Dann, I do think he does deserve the 6. And like I've said, him and Kelly done a fantastic job at the back. Yes, we conceded 2 goals, but arguably one of them was just a really dodgy own goal, which of course Kelly scored, and then the other one was a wonder strike. So really for me, not much more to say about Dan's performance other than the fact that yes, his pace let him down at times, but the fact that he more than made up for that with his ability in the air, particularly from corners, and obviously just his general sort of experienced head, obviously helping Palace get through the game. So once again, Scott Dann here, I'm going to give him a 6 overall. So I'm going to move on to Martin Kelly, who I'm also going to give a 6 overall, and we might as well talk about the own goal. Now, of course, you know, it's not great and you shouldn't really be laughing when your own player scores an own goal, but in the context of the fact that, yes, Brighton were basically safe now anyway before the game, you know, if we could have dragged them down and brought it sort of to the last game of the season to see whether Cardiff could actually go above Brighton. But I suppose the way you've got to look at it and the way you've sort of got to laugh about it and the humour behind it is actually we've got the lead, you know, great goal from Wilfried Zaha, but then obviously Kelly absolutely hates Brighton so much, as he should as a Palace player, so actually he takes matters into his own hands and actually puts the ball in his own net, and that was really superbly sort of summed up by the Eagles Beak, you know, on their website, and I have to agree, because that's exactly what it was, because we comfortably took the lead, got into the game, but then obviously Kelly hates Brighton so much that of course he took it into his own hands and put it into his own net. Now, obviously, if that was a striker's goal in terms of the delivery from the right hand side, and obviously he finished it, that of course would have been great to see. But then actually you've got to look on the other side and go, you know, you should really be dealing with that better. And, you know, whether that be him having a bit of better communication with someone like Gaeta, just making sure that they're in the right positions, or whether that be, you know, that Martin Kelly, rather than just trying to sort of hoof it forward or try and hoof it out for a corner, at least try and stop the ball, get a little touch on the ball just to stop it dead. Whatever you have to do with the ball, just make sure it doesn't go in. But I suppose in the context of it, we've just got to laugh in the fact that he was obviously trying to relegate Brighton. But actually, you know, I've given him a 6 overall, mainly because of the own goal sort of brings it down from a 7. But apart from that, there isn't really too much I can say about his performance, because much like Dan, he's done a fairly decent job defensively, and I suppose the phrase you could use was faultless, because that's exactly what it was. And like I've said already, you know, apart from being at fault for the goal, I think he's done really well in this game here. But actually, looking at the context of the whole season, you know, the fact that, once again, going back to that point about Saka and Tompkins being out injured, I think that Kelly in particular has been one of the best players to actually stand up in their absence and do a really great job. And, you know, since he's come into the side, whether that be playing alongside Saka or Tompkins, or obviously playing alongside Dan in that new partnership, wherever he's played and whenever he's played, he's done a fairly decent job. So once again, it was nice to see him actually put in a very solid performance here again. But then, you know, on the other hand, I can't really give him a 7 because of his performance, and, you know, because his performance probably does warrant it, but the fact that he scored that quite hysterical own goal was of course not great to see, albeit we're going to laugh at it now in the context of, you know, the league, what, you know, basically what could have happened. And I suppose a really interesting stat there was after the game is the fact that our last player to score an own goal was actually Martin Kelly against Chelsea. I thought it was last season, so it's not, you know, it's obviously not nice to score own goals, but I suppose for Martin Kelly, he's got a record for the bad reasons, in the fact that he scored our latest own goal and also scored the one before that. But once again, a faultless performance from him, bar the own goal that he scored. So I do think the 6 for Martin Kelly is a fair result. So I'm now going to move on to the final player in our back four, and that is the left back Joe Ward, who I'm going to give a 6 overall. Now, I suppose this game was a sort of a throwback to the Arsenal game a few weeks ago, where obviously there was quite a lot of surprise before the game as to the fact that Patrick Vernano had been dropped, and obviously Joe Ward had come into the side playing a left back. But I suppose looking back at the Arsenal game, obviously Joe Ward was a massive success there, and obviously the fact that PVA was a little bit disappointing in the last game, I do think he was actually rightly did deserve, you know, for Joe Ward to come back into the side. And, you know, I do think the 6 I've given him does really reflect that, even though he is obviously a right back and he's played at right midfield as well, but he's a right-sided player. The fact that he's done a relatively good job at left back really goes to show sort of that professionalism and that sort of adaptability that he's shown in the last few games. But like I've said already, you know, PVA's been out of form recently, so I do think it was quite justified that actually, considering he played well against Arsenal, that Joe Ward actually came back into the side. And I suppose the word you could use to describe his performance was reliable, because that's exactly what it was. He'd done what was expected of him, nothing spectacular, nothing necessarily terrible, just done a shift for the side, and certainly done his part defensively to obviously helping us get through the game, restricting Cardiff, and eventually for us going on to the win. And, you know, when you consider, you know, he's obviously, for most of his career he's played as a right back, so the fact that he's been asked to perform on the opposite's flank, and the fact that he's able to adapt to it so well and, you know, play as well as he has done, was really credit to him. And I suppose the only negative side of him playing there is obviously we know he isn't the fastest player even when he plays on the right hand side, but obviously when you play on the left hand side it's a little bit worse. I suppose it comes into the game a little bit more, the fact that you're sort of having to run on your opposite side, so maybe you're not necessarily as good as, you know, chasing after players or trying to keep on the inside of players as much as you would do on the right flank. But I still think, you know, when players were coming at him, I still think he was still able to deal with them and had an overall, well, definitely had an overall solid game. It's just the fact that sometimes, a few times he was beaten for pace, was maybe just the fact that actually the players were coming down his side, and, you know, on the right hand side, you obviously have to deal with them on his right and stop them coming in inside from that side, whereas on the other side you're stopping them coming in from your left. So maybe that's what played a part in it, the fact that, you know, when players are running at him on the left hand side, obviously makes it a little bit more difficult for him because he's obviously dealing with them from a different approach. But then on the other hand, the fact that for the majority of the game he defended fairly solidly, certainly wasn't at fault for the 2 goals we conceded, and, you know, overall done a really great job in terms of restricting Cardiff. Certainly when it was 2-1 where Cardiff were actively looking to get back into the game, that sort of period of time in particular, I thought he'd done a really good job of dealing with the threat. And, you know, it does beg the question once again, you know, should he start the next game at left back? And personally for me, last game of the season, why not? Because he's played 2 games there this season, he's proved that he can play well at left back, so why not put him in there and just see what he can do there? Because certainly with Patrick Van Aanholt you know, being a bit out of form, and with Jeffrey Schlupp now playing in central midfield, obviously if Joe Ward can play there and that's a passage for him to get into the side, then certainly do it. Because why not, you know, going into next season, actually see if Joe Ward can be an option at left back, and then going into next season we can actually use him there as well. So once again here, Joe Ward obviously playing out of position, playing at left back when of course he'd normally play at right back, but actually it was a fairly good performance from him, done well defensively, and other than the odd occasion getting beaten for pace, I do think he'd done a solid job at left back, sorry, obviously you've got to get that right this time. So I do think overall the 6 I've given him is a fair result. So I'm now going to move on to the first player in our midfield, and that is the captain, Luka Milivojevic, who I'm going to give a 7 overall. Now, before I go on to talk about his performance, I might as well talk about the layout of the team, or the formation we started the game with. And actually, quite a lot of people were surprised in the fact that Roy Hodgson, considering it's a Cardiff team who, you know, are fighting for relegation, he actually went with quite an attacking team and quite an open team in terms of how the midfield was concerned. And obviously playing a 4-4-2, essentially what it was, he obviously had Luka and MacArthur sitting quite deep, he had Zaha and Townsend on the 2 wings with Jordan Ayew and Michy Batshuayi up front, and you could look at that and go, yes, it's a 4-4-2, you've got 2 wingers, 2 strikers, and obviously the 2 deep line midfielders as well. But actually the other way you could look at it is actually it was sort of a 4-2-4 formation, in the fact that we were going at them, trying to break them down, because we all remember that 0-0, I think it was on Boxing Day back in December, and that was quite horrid to watch because we couldn't break Cardiff down, and that was when we were playing with 1 striker. So maybe the approach was actually throw all we have at Cardiff to try and break them down, so we don't sort of end in a 0-0 stalemate like we did back in December. And certainly it did work. We scored 3 goals, 3 great goals, and of course, even though we did concede goals, I do think our approach to the game certainly did work. But moving on to Luka, obviously playing alongside MacArthur in midfield, I think he was always involved in the heart of the midfield, and that's the main reason I've given him the 7. You know, the fact that he was always looking to get on the ball, always looking to sort of dictate the play, and that's something in the last, you know, I've criticised him quite a lot for this season, in the fact that some games he's great scoring penalties, free kicks, corners are great, but then other games where he's looking to play dictate the midfield, he isn't quite doing that, gives the ball away quite a lot. So actually it was nice to see him actually being that anchor in that midfield, looking to dictate play, looking to control possession. And when you consider I can't remember if it was about, but I think at one point we had about 65% possession. So it just goes to show that actually when Luka is playing well in terms of possession, it obviously plays into our hands, and certainly that's what we saw in this game here. Now, obviously alongside his general play in the midfield, you know, he'd done his usual work in terms of making solid challenges, making life difficult for the sort of the midfield players of Cardiff, and certainly done a very effective job in giving that extra layer of protection to the back 4. And I suppose, you know, another thing as well is that sometimes you just want your midfielders just to play simple passes, just to sort of build up the play and actually get forward. And quite a lot this season he's tried to play long balls, or he's tried to do short passes, and, you know, they've been intercepted by the opposition. This game I think he got it spot on. So the fact that his involvement in the heart of the midfield was spot on, challenges were spot on, and of course laying the ball off with just simple passes, you know, just maintaining possession and trying to sort of break Cardiff down by just passing around them was a really effective way how he played in the game. And I suppose you've got to look at the game overall, and I've given him a 7 because I was impressed with that overall midfield play. But then on the other hand, you've got to look at the midfield and go, actually, because we were playing 4-4-2, the midfield 2 of Milivojevic and MacArthur were quite stretched at times, and I suppose Cardiff obviously with them they're obviously relegated now, but at the time they're fighting for relegation. Obviously you'd think they'd be a little bit better in terms of sort of attacking that weakness in terms of the fact that we were playing only 2 players in midfield, and that's why we were a little bit stretched at times, because you've got 2 players where you would normally play 3 in midfield, so of course you might expect them to struggle. But actually, other than a few moments here and there where maybe Cardiff countered and it was a bit too open in the midfield down that centre of the pitch, other than that I can't really sort of pick out any moments where I wasn't impressed by people like McArthur, like Milivojevic. So I do think overall the 7 for the captain is an overall fair result. And like I've said, the fact that he was looking to get involved in midfield, looking to, get forward, get back as well as just doing his normal stuff in terms of, making challenges, winning the ball back, as well as obviously in terms of, his passing, just making sure he wasn't giving possession away, making sure he was just making little simple passes just to sort of tire Cardiff down. Everything about his game was much better than he has been in recent weeks. And, we've got 1 game left of the season. Hopefully he can go off on a high, maybe get another penalty, maybe score a goal. Because certainly it's been a great season for Luca in terms of goal scoring, but also in terms of some of his midfield performances, in terms of dictating the play and being that real mainstay, that main anchor in the team. I think he's done a very good job doing that role this season. But once again here, Luka Milivojevic, the captain, I do think the 7 is a fair result. So now I'm going to move on to the second midfielder in our team, and that is James McArthur, who I'm going to give an 8 overall. Now obviously I might as well, start off with the fact that McArthur got an assist in the game. And obviously, I've talked about recently the fact that McArthur's been sort of a player who's been hot and cold. Some performances have been good, others haven't been. And of course, in terms of, people's opinions of him, some people were saying he's a mainstay in the team, he's really important to us. And then on the other hand, people were going, actually, Roy Hodgson, he always seems to pick him. He seems to be a manager's favourite, even though sometimes he doesn't perform. But this performance here really epitomises why he's sort of underrated by some Palace fans, in the fact that he put in a very good performance, both in how he played in the midfield, but also his goal contributions in the fact that he got an assist in the game. Now, talking about that assist, obviously that was for Palace's 3rd goal, obviously Andros Townsend's strike. And the main thing that was impressive of it is obviously Townsend done most of the work by running about 35 yards, cutting inside, then having the shot. But if you look at the build-up to that goal, it was absolutely fantastic in terms of the ball being taken along, a goal kick from Cardiff. Obviously, I think it was McArthur controlled it, passed it to Townsend, back to McArthur again. And obviously there's about 2 or 3 Cardiff players around him. So the fact that McArthur stayed calm, had possession of the ball, managed to get around the 2 or 3 Cardiff players, and then sort of make a little run, then sort of just slide it out to that right hand side for Andros Townsend, was really great to see. Now of course it's not one of the best assists you're going to see. It's not like a back heel or a fantastic cross into the box or sort of a defence splitting pass, but just that calmness on the ball, in being able to hold on to possession, and then when the right time is to release the ball and allow Townsend to make that run, that was something that was impressive for me. And it may not go down as one of the best assists, but in terms of just the build up to it and that calmness he showed was really something that did impress me. And many people might not pick this out, but for me that was one of the main reasons I've given him an 8. It was obviously because of his overall midfield work, but that sort of calmness when he was created that assist for Townsend was of course great to see. Now I suppose one of the things you've got to look at is that yes, he's sort of been a hot and cold player, and people's opinion is almost like Marmite in the fact that some people like him, some people don't. You've really got to appreciate what he does in the team, because we always know what we're going to get from him in terms of just a hard-working performance, full of tenacity. But this game took it to a whole new level in the fact that he was very, very hard-working, in terms of his midfield play, looking to drive forward. And when you consider we were playing a 4-4-2 with only 2 central midfielders, he obviously had to cover a lot more area than he would do normally. So the fact that him and Milivojevic both covered a lot of area, dealt with the threat from Cardiff well, as well as the fact that we had lots of possession, was down to people like McArthur and Milivojevic retaining possession, working hard for the team, was of course good to see. And I suppose he also combined that overall midfield work with great defensive work. Obviously one clearance in particular, obviously the ball's come into the box, a great chance for Cardiff to get a goal in the game. And of course James McArthur was able to get in the right position and clear the ball out of danger. So it was really an overall sort of all-round performance in the fact that offensively he was able to play well and get that assist. Overall in the midfield, just hard working, having that tenacity, keeping hold of possession, and of course defensively in the fact that he was able to position himself and get back on the line to make that clearance. So all 3 parts of his game very impressive, and like I've said already, it is even more impressive when you consider the fact that the midfield was quite stretched, and that was all down to the fact that we were playing a 4-4-2 with basically, well, I say a 4-4-2, a 4-2-4 essentially what it was at times. So the fact that him and Milivojevic adapted to that, played well, and just sort of persevered with the fact that the midfield was a bit stretched at times was of course great to see. So once again here, James McCarthy, I'm going to give him an 8 overall. Obviously mainly for that fantastic assist in terms of remaining calm and releasing Townsend down the right hand side, but also just for his overall hard working ethic in the game, as well as the fact that he made that fantastic clearance off the line, and like I've said already, fully deserving of the 8 I've given him. So now I'm going to move on to the first of our 2 wingers, and I'm going to start with Andros Townsend, who I'm going to give a 9 overall. Now, of course, you know, I could talk all day really about Townsend's performance because it was just that good. And I suppose if you look at the game, aside from the assist and the goal he got in the game, it was just an overall, you know, what you would expect from a winger performance, in the fact that he was constantly causing problems to the opposition's back four, constantly looking to put crosses into the box, looking to sort of run at the fullbacks, run at the centre backs. So everything about his game in an attacking perspective was great to see, and that was sort of a really typical winger's performance in terms of what we saw from him in the game. And you know, the fact that he combined it also with sort of that tenacity just to keep possession and just do it all for the team is something that I was impressed with. But you know, I've given him a 9 because of obviously how good he was overall, but the fact that he got both a goal and an assist, so got 2 sort of goal contributions in the game, is something that I was really impressed with. And certainly when you consider sort of since sort of January time, he sort of had a really great spell, sort of November, December time. So once going sort of after January, he hasn't necessarily been back to his best. So it was nice to see him sort of get back to his best in the fact that he got both a goal and an assist in the game. Now, of course, last few games or so, he's obviously hasn't been in the starting 11. Obviously, he's been dropped, and we've sort of changed our formation a bit, brought people like Meyer and Chiarte into the side. And to be honest, it was nice to see him actually sort of come back into the team with a bang, in the fact that he was able to sort of make up for them few games where he's been sitting on the bench and coming off and making little impacts and little cameos towards the end of the game. It was nice to see him actually come back into form with a goal and an assist. And you know, the goal itself, you know, that could have been up there as one of the goals of the season. Obviously he wouldn't win it, but still, you know, he could have probably knocked off one of the other contenders for the goal of the season if they hadn't have closed it before the end of the season. And I suppose, you know, I think before the game he was talking about how he needs to add a few more goals to his game and looking to get a few more contributions like that. He obviously made up for that, the fact that he said he needed to do it and he delivered, which of course shows a great mentality, the fact that you want to do something, you want to achieve something, and then a few days later you go out and do it. And that was something that was really impressive for me. Now, in terms of just going through the goals and the assists, obviously the goal, I might as well talk about the goal, obviously that Palace's first goal, which of course he assisted. That all came down from Zaha making a great run, released the ball to Townsend, who was of course at that time in the game playing on that left hand side. And of course all he had to do was obviously make a little run, try and get to sort of the edge of the area, ripping a ball into the box, low on the ground. Of course Zaha done his magic, dribbled past players and put him one way, put him the other, and then put it into the bottom left hand corner. So of course the quality and the skill from Wilf in that instance was obviously great to see, but just that sheer fact that Townsend made that run, which made Zaha actually see that available pass, make the pass to him, and then the fact that he was able to see Zaha make that run into the centre of the field, and then he was able to deliver a cross into the box, was of course great to see. Because of course he could have just, like he done so many other times in the game, obviously put some nice deliveries in the box, but the fact that he got this one pinpoint, in the fact that he was able to find Zaha on the edge of the box and then allow him to do that magic, was of course great to see. And you know, I might as well go back to that, because he probably could have had another assist in the game, and that was once again a ball coming into the box. He put a lovely weighted ball into the box. Michy Batshuayi had a header through on goal, and it was brilliantly saved by the Cardiff goalkeeper. You know, you've got to give him credit there. So not only did he get the assist in the game, but actually there were other times in the game where actually he was looking to create for his teammates. And you know, if it wasn't for the brilliant sort of acrobatics of the goalkeeper, he probably would have got yet another assist. Now moving on to the goal he scored, obviously I talked about McCarthy, you know, being calm and maintaining possession of the ball to allow him to obviously release Townsend down the right hand side. And I suppose, even though it wasn't the same as the goal he scored a few seasons ago against West Brom, where he literally ran the whole length of the pitch, this one was a little bit less, about 35 yards, but nevertheless, the fact that he made that run, drove past, you know, several Cardiff players, and then obviously cut inside and put it into the bottom corner, it obviously came off the post, hit the other post and went in, was of course great to see. And certainly, yes, it's not going to win his goal of the season, let's say, even if the sort of the competition and the vote was still running, but nevertheless I do think it was obviously great to see him actually contribute yet again with a goal, because certainly I don't think I'll be the only person to say it. Over the last sort of few weeks or so, he had that little spell in sort of November, December time, then after that he hasn't necessarily been playing that well, so it was nice to see him actually come back with a bang and actually perform really well. But like I've said already, you know, an outstanding performance from him, and you know, the fact that I've given him a 9 really just highlights how good he was, because not only did he get that fantastic assist, not only did he score that fantastic individual goal by running the length of the pitch, cutting inside and placing it perfectly into the bottom corner, but just that overall attacking intent and that attacking sort of mentality he had throughout the game, just to constantly run at the fullbacks, run at the centre-backs, put balls into the box. Everything about his game was very impressive, and you know, when you consider I don't give out many 9s throughout the season, just really highlights how good his performance was. So once again, a good performance from Townsend, and certainly deserving of the 9 I've given him. So I'm now going to move on to the winger on the opposite side, and that is of course Wilfried Zaha, who I'm going to give an 8 overall. Now, much the same with Townsend in the fact that I've given him an 8. It was all, well, I've given Townsend a 9, but in the fact that I've given them both high ratings is basically down to the fact that obviously Zaha got a goal in the game, which I'll go on to talk about, but just his overall sort of attacking play throughout the game in terms of just causing havoc for the Cardiff defenders was obviously great to see. Now, obviously we know he played for Cardiff, you know, before he came to Palace, and the fact that he went on loan to Cardiff when he was at Man United. Obviously there was quite a lot of boos, and I don't really understand it, because he obviously wasn't great for Cardiff, but he didn't necessarily do anything bad which would warrant him getting booed. But nevertheless, there were boos ringing out throughout the whole ground, and we all know, we've seen it so many times this season, when you boo Zaha, he's going to pull something out of the bag, and that's exactly what he did, because he responded well, and obviously had a chance before his goal which just went wide of the post. But then on the second time of asking from a very similar position, he obviously finished it to make it 1-0 for Palace. And, you know, I think overall, you've got to look at his performance and go, it was an all-round good performance. You know, got the goal, was looking to be a creator, looking to cause havoc. But the goal itself is the main thing that I was really impressed with. And it was nice to see him, you know, finally get up to 10 goals for this season, which just goes to show, you know, he was... You know, we were talking sort of mid-season going, this is one of his worst seasons, he hasn't been playing that great, and we were saying he was having an off season, but then he might end the season with 10 goals. Obviously we don't know what will happen in the Bournemouth game, but if he ends the season on 10 goals, for a player who's had a bad season, or not as good as the season as the ones previous, really just goes to show the quality that this guy has. And I suppose, obviously, there's all this speculation now as to whether he'd leave the club in the summer. And to be honest, this game once again showed how integral he is to our side, in the fact that he got us that early goal in the game. And just sort of, I wouldn't say he carried us in this game, because people like Batshuayi and Townsend also scored. But just the way he played in terms of being that attacking force, carrying us forward, you know, looking to create chances in and around the box, was of course great to see. And I suppose the only way you can describe his performance is just by saying it was simply class. He was a class above everyone else, and you know, if it wasn't for Townsend actually, you know, getting a goal and also getting an assist and just being an overall attacking threat, you know, you've got to be looking at Zaha also up there with Townsend as one of the best performers on the day, because certainly from what we've seen in terms of the goal he scored by actually getting on the end of Townsend's cross, you know, pulling the defender one way, pulling him and then sort of going the other way, and that sort of misplaced the defender and the goalkeeper, and then just rifling it into the bottom corner, that just sort of epitomised his overall attacking play. And like I've said, it was brilliant to see him actually score the goal, because of course it takes him up to 10 goals for the season, and I think that's now his best ever Premier League tally, or best Palace tally actually, forget the Premier League, best goals scored in the campaign. So it was nice to see him do well, and obviously, you know, get the goal. But like I've said, it was really great to see him actually, you know, play as well as he did. And you know, the fact that he's been booed so many times this season, but of course he's gone on to punish the opposition, it was also quite ironic to see actually Cardiff fans boo him, and then what does he do, like he always does, actually delivers on the field. And like I've said already, a class above everyone else, and certainly does deserve the 8 I've given him. And you know, I might as well end this section. You know, obviously it's, you know, we don't know whether he's going to leave in the summer. Obviously people like Townsend have come out recently, people like Scott Down, and said, you know, he's such a great talent, we want to keep him here as long as possible, it's great to play alongside him. Obviously Townsend went a little bit more into detail and said he's one of the best players he's played with technically, and you know, Townsend's played with people like Modric, people like Harry Kane. So when you've got your teammates saying that's how good you are, really goes to show the talent this guy has. And you know, it's inevitable that eventually he's going to leave, but long may he continue to be in a Palace shirt, because certainly performances like this are really great to see. So once again, Wilfried Zaha here, playing on the wing. I do think the 8 is a fair result. So I'm now going to move on to the first of our 2 strikers, and that is Jordan Ayew, who I'm going to give a 6 overall. Now, of course, before the game, Roy Hodgson made 4 changes, with actually Jordan Ayew being one of these changes. And I suppose it was a surprise inclusion because many thought, with Benteke being out injured, you'd just sort of do a simple swap, Batshuayi coming in his place, and we would sort of continue with similar lineup that we have done in recent weeks. But actually, it was nice to see Hodgson do something different in the fact that he went with a very, very attacking 4-4-2 formation, with, of course, Jordan Ayew and Batshuayi being the main of that. Now, I suppose the main thing about Ayew's performance, which was quite good to see, is the fact that obviously he's a Swansea player, and of course Cardiff are rivals with Swansea. So it was good to see for Jordan Ayew in the fact that many people were booing him because of that connection, and actually he had a really good game and he was delivering despite all that sort of mood and that sort of welcome he got from the Cardiff fans. And I suppose that sort of gave him that added sort of incentive to actually do something in the game and actually look to get involved, because of course it would be nice for him as a Swansea player to actually go, look at me, and I've been able to relegate my team's rivals. But I suppose you've got to look at it and go, aside from the fact that he was a surprise inclusion and the fact that that sort of mood and welcome he got from the Cardiff fans, I actually thought he put in a very, very good performance. And whilst it may not have been as good as people like Townsend and Zaha actually getting goals in the game, just that sort of work ethic he had to work hard, look to carry the ball forward, come in deep and, driving Palace forward. Whatever it was about his game, I thought he did really well. But the thing that was only negative about his performance and why he's limited to a 6 is that whilst he does all this hard work and he looks good in terms of driving the ball, and of course the assist, which isn't going to count as an assist because it took a deflection, but that sort of that pass, that 1-2 pass with Batshuayi, which of course allowed and released Batshuayi to go through and score to get Palace's second goal. Little things like that just really goes to show the quality that Jordan Ayew has, and he won't get the credit he deserved because it took a slight deflection, but that sort of positional play to get inside the box and then being in a really good position whereby you can receive a pass and then sort of quickly give it back to the player so Batshuayi could go forth and goal and score was of course great to see. And I suppose you've got to look at his overall performance and go, yes, he didn't really look like scoring. He rarely looked like, or he was rarely getting into positions where he'd be able to score from, or at least create a chance for his teammates. But nevertheless, I think he was decent, and that was mainly down to what we've seen so much from him this season, and the fact that he works hard, looks to create chances, and whilst he may not look like whenever he's on the ball he looks like he's going to score, just having that intent and having that sort of work ethic and that sort of energy as well, just to sort of drift up front and come deep or do what he ever has to do, was of course great to see. So once again, no real moments other than the assist, which isn't an assist that he obviously gave for Batshuayi by returning the ball to him. Aside from that, there isn't really too much more to say other than the fact that I do think the 6-4 Jordan Ayew is a fair result. So now I'm going to move on to the final player in our starting 11, and that is the striker Michy Batshuayi, who I'm going to give a 7 overall. Now, much like what I said with a few players, obviously might as well talk about the goal he scored first before I go on to talk about his performance, which his overall play in the game wasn't necessarily that great, but of course the goal he scored was absolute quality. So I talked already about Jordan Ayew in the fact that he obviously got into a good position, and of course Batshuayi gave the ball to Ayew. Ayew just took a few touches, put it through the legs of the Cardiff defender, which of course released Batshuayi to actually go through on goal. And it was a fantastic finish in the fact that he rifled it absolutely into the top of the net, and of course that made it 2-1 to Palace just before half time, which of course going in at 2-1 just gives us that little bit of the advantage obviously, but also gives us that confidence sort of coming out for the second half in the fact that we've already got that lead. And yes, we went on to concede towards the end of the game, and we only won the game 3-2 as opposed to maybe 3-1 if we hadn't have conceded that late goal. I still think the fact that we scored, so I think it was the 39th minute just before half time, was of course a really great time to get your goal. And I suppose you've got to look at Batshuayi, and actually before that point, so you're looking at sort of almost 40 minutes of the game, he was quite anonymous, wasn't really looking to get involved, and it was only people like Jordan Ayew just sort of bouncing around him actually allowed him to get involved in the play. But that shows the real quality of a player, the fact that he's not involved, he's not really playing well, but when one chance falls to him, he's able to finish it. And once again, this is something we've seen quite a lot from him this season. Obviously he scored, I think it's 3 goals for Palace, and most of them, or quite a lot of them, have actually come, you're looking at sort of 1 or 2 of them have come in games where he hasn't necessarily been playing that great up until that point, but just having that quality that when the ball falls to you, you're able to finish that chance was of course great to see. And it was exactly the same here, up until sort of like I said, 39th, 40th minute, weren't really playing that well, but when that chance fell to him, that 1-2 pass with Jordan Ayew allowed him to be released, and of course absolutely rifled it into the top corner. And I suppose you've got to look at it and go, you know, you'd rather a player who actually isn't necessarily that involved, but he can chip in with a goal here and there, as opposed to a player who maybe can get you goals and score great goals, but then sometimes, you know, or so, I suppose, yeah, someone who can chip in with goals who doesn't play well is better, or not necessarily involved, as opposed to someone who, you know, basically is not really involved a lot, doesn't really get goals. And you know, you've got to look at it both ways, and I think it's a bit confusing, obviously, trying to put it that way. But like I've said, Batshuayi wasn't really involved, but still chipped in with goal, as opposed to someone who actually doesn't really work hard, or isn't really involved that much, or is involved quite a lot, but actually still doesn't get the goal. And I suppose you've got to look at someone like Jordan Ayew as the classic example, in the fact that yes, he's always involved, always working hard for the team, but doesn't always score, whereas Batshuayi done the complete opposite, wasn't really involved, but actually chipped in the goal. And it's nice to finally get that cleared up. Obviously it made it a bit confusing for myself. And I suppose the good thing about the goal was, of course, it gave Palace the lead, but more so than that, it actually sort of brung Batshuayi into the game, brought him to life essentially. And that's what some people have put it, because that's exactly what he did, because it just gave us as a team that impetus, and also him in the fact that we'd now got ahead in the game and sort of brought about that confidence. And certainly, as we saw in the second half, he was involved a lot more, he was looking to get on the ball a lot more, and a few more chances came to him, and that was really sort of down to the fact that he scored the goal, which of course boosted his confidence. And I suppose the thing you've got to look about him and the fact that I've given him a 7 is the fact that he always looks like he's got a potential of a goal in him. And what I mean by that is the fact that, you know, yes, he may not always play well or is involved as much as he would have liked to be as a striker, but when chances fall to him, he looks like he's always able to get on the end of them, or at least try and score them, and that's really great to see. But I suppose maybe one of the reasons why he did struggle and wasn't really involved is maybe just down to the physical side of his game. And you know, that's something I've talked about quite a lot already this season, you know, comparing him to Benteke. And I suppose Benteke is involved quite a lot but doesn't always get goals, whereas Batshuayi isn't that involved but does chip in with goals here and there. So you've sort of got a juxtaposition of two different types of performances there. But once again here, Batshuayi got the all-important goal for us, which is, you know, hopefully, you know, I don't really think we'll get him on a permanent deal, but even if we get him on another loan, you know, touch wood, because that would be really nice to see him actually continue what he started this season. Because yet again, giving him a 7, a very fair result. Obviously the goal he scored was fantastic in terms of, you know, doing that 1-2 with Ayew, getting the ball inside the box and obviously finishing it. And I do think that sort of rejuvenated his second half performance, in the fact that he was a lot better after that. So once again here, I do think Michy Batshuayi does deserve the 7 I've given him. So I'm now going to move briefly on to the 3 substitutions Palace made in the game. Obviously I'm going to give them all 6s, because I do think they weren't necessarily on the pitch long enough to make an impact, but they certainly towards the end of the game just basically came on just to give us fresh legs and help us see the game out. So of course Bukayo Saka came on in the 73rd minute. Once again, didn't really have that much time to make an impact. Nothing real of note to talk about him, but nevertheless came on, gave us that fresh legs. Obviously Max Meyer came on in the 78th minute, and once again gave us these fresh legs, and he slotted into a position where obviously we were playing a 3-man midfield, but just to help us see the game out, just to shore things up, we went from a 2-man midfield to a 3-man midfield, and of course Meyer was quite key to that. And of course Cheikhou Kouyaté came on 84 minutes, and yes, he was a little bit poor in possession, you know, giving the ball away a few times the short time he was on the pitch. But once again, like I said with Meyer and Saka, he came on just to help us see the game out, and he certainly did do that. So once again, 3 substitutions here, obviously Bukayo Saka, Max Meyer and Cheikhou Kouyaté. Not really too much of note to talk about, they're sort of short cameos on the pitch, but both of them, all 3 of them, sorry, I do think do deserve the 6s I've given them. So now just to give a sort of a brief summary of the game, and of course, you know, we obviously only got 1 game left of the season, and of course after that I'm hopefully maybe planning to do a live stream or doing sort of an overall season review. But I suppose there's a few things sort of bundled into here, you know, talking about the game, talking about the season, all different things, really sort of my thoughts after the game. Now I suppose you've got to look at our last few seasons and look that obviously we always finish the season quite strongly, and I suppose this game, obviously our final away game of the season, sort of ended in quite a similar fashion to all of our away games this season. You know, if you look at the away league table for this season, we're something like 5th in the league, which really goes to show that, you know, we really need to sort out our home form if the fact that our away form is so much better and one of the best in the league. And I suppose this was sort of a very similar to quite a lot of our away performances this season, in the fact that we defended relatively well, but it was mainly down to the excellent sort of counter-attacking, attacking play, and that sort of approach and performance is why we were really impressive in the game. And I suppose you've got to look at it and go, we dominated quite a lot of the game, but I suppose it was down to a number of things. You know, it wasn't just down to the fact that we were better than Cardiff. Maybe it was down to the fact that they were a little bit more direct. They were sort of easing off of us. They were just allowing us to attack them. And of course, maybe towards the end of the game, because we brought on substitutions who didn't necessarily play as well as the other players did, they just came on to bring fresh legs. Maybe that made us sort of look less dominant in comparison to actually, you know, in the last quarter of the game we weren't that great, but in comparison to the start of the game, we were so much better. But you've got to look at the game as a whole. You know, the full 90 minutes, we dominated quite well. And whether that's just the fact that Cardiff didn't necessarily have that quality, or they were putting up a fight but just allowed, sort of left them exposed at the back, which we exploited. Whichever way you want to look at it, we dominated the game in that respect. And it was sort of a very similar fashion to most of our away games this season. Now, of course, you know, we could talk all day, and this is something that loads of people have brought up on. Obviously, we can sort of look at our home games this season and go, actually, we can't be excited about that. We're terrible. I think we're 6th in the league for away games, but we're still something like second to last on the home games, which really we can't really get excited about that. But then on the other half, you've got to look at our away form and go, that's been absolutely fantastic. And it's mainly down to the fact that we have very skillful players, have lots of pace on the counter attack. And that is why we've done so well against a number of teams of all different abilities, you know, whether that be the Arsenals, or whether that be the Leicester Cities of the league, or whether it be teams like Cardiff, teams like Burnley. You know, teams like this, we're able to get results against them, and it's all down to, you know, our sort of attacking approach, our skillful and paced performances. And it just begs the question, if we can do it so well away from home, if we can be so potent in attack away from home, obviously why can't we do it at home? And I suppose this is just another game yet again, which of course we sent the team down to the Championship. Obviously, it's not nice to obviously relegate teams, but the fact that we've done it 3 years in a row now, obviously relegating Hull, relegating Huddersfield this season, relegating Cardiff, and of course relegating Stoke City last season. So of course we have a record of relegating teams, and it isn't nice doing it and condemning them to the Championship. But I suppose one of the reasons why Cardiff couldn't do it on the day and just couldn't get that extra 3 points, which could have taken it to would have taken it to the last day, albeit Brighton looked to be safe already before the game. You know, it's sort of just another side who weren't able to cope with that Palace attacking style. And, you know, when you consider Palace are so far more suited to playing away from home than we are at home, it just shows that if we actually get our gear going, which we did in the game, of course we can go forth and get a result. Now, I suppose, obviously, it was a really great win, and, you know, it was great for us to get the 3 points. But, of course, there's a few negatives here. You know, yes, it was good to watch. The goals, all 3 of the goals, really, we scored with quality. But then you've got to look at it and go, Cardiff were quite poor throughout the game. You know, yes, they had a few chances, hit the post and forced the keeper into saves. But then maybe they could have done a lot better, and certainly defensively in terms of stopping our goals, maybe they could have done better there. And maybe against better opposition, playing the 2 midfielders that we did in that 4-4-2, maybe we would have struggled a little bit more. But because Cardiff didn't exploit that, we were just able to play our away from home style, and eventually came away with a really good result. And I suppose, even though, you know, maybe if Cardiff were a little bit better, we would have been up for a little bit more of and I wouldn't say competitive game, but a game where maybe Cardiff would have been a little bit better in midfield. You know, you've got to beg the question whether, if they had exploited our 2-man midfield better, that would have been the case. But overall, you've got to look at it and go, 9 wins all season, away from home. You can't really have any complaints there. And in the last sort of 3 games or so, we've got a win away at Arsenal, a win away at Cardiff, and of course a draw against Everton in there as well. And, you know, you've got to look at that and go 7 points from them games. Obviously 2 wins and a draw, nothing to moan about. And hopefully, you know, the game coming up at the weekend, next weekend against Bournemouth, hopefully we can cap it off with, you know, whether that be a point or whether that be 3 points. It'd be really great for us sort of to end the season on a high. But, you know, like I've said already, you know, you've got to look back at our performance here, and it was absolutely fantastic. And like I said, it was all down to 3 things. You know, the trickery we had in the team, the pace, obviously, to get in behind, and just the clinical finishing as well. Because so many times this season we've had loads of chances. You look at the Cardiff game back in December, had about 30 shots on target but no goals, finished 0-0. Whereas this game here, we had many chances and we were able to be clinical with them, which, as we've done so many times away from home this season, allowed us to go forth and celebrate a win. And it would be so nice, so nice for us to actually go into next season, even the last game against Bournemouth, but especially next season, to actually go into home games with the same sort of attacking mentality that we have done with away games this season, because it is really great to watch. But I do want to finish by just talking about the Bournemouth game. Obviously on to Bournemouth next week, and we really want to try and finish the game on a high. And it's not just about 2 wins in a row, or getting an extra 3 points, or it's not just about getting the win and just ending the season on a high because of the win. It's all about getting our highest ever Premier League points total. If we win there, we've got 36 points at the minute. Win there, win at home against Bournemouth takes us up to 49. From 46 to 49. That would be a really great way to end the season, in the fact that we get another point and we end on the win, but also it would be great in the context of it will take us to our highest ever Premier League finish in terms of points total. So that, of course, will be great to see. So on to Bournemouth next weekend. So I'm now going to move on to the Man of the Match award. But before we do that and give you my Man of the Match and who I thought had the biggest influence on the game, I'm now going to give you the 4 nominations I put forward for the award. Now, when you consider, obviously, this was an all-round very good team performance. Yes, we obviously only won the game 3-2, and obviously we sort of gave away right at the end our 2-goal advantage. But nevertheless, it was actually a really great game of football for both sides. Obviously, Cardiff less so because they got relegated, but in terms of the getting rid of sort of the context of the game, it was a really, really well contested game, a really nice watch, on a Saturday evening. And across the field there were good performances from Palace, and arguably I could put all of the players up for the Man of the Match shortlist, because they've each player from the Palace team done their little bit to help us get over the line, obviously get this win. But the 4 players I've picked out really sort of epitomised why we actually won this game, because of their hard work, their commitment, their sort of contribution. And I like I said already, I could include other players in this, but these 4 players in particular are things that I think that, or players who I think have done more than others. But also, if you look at the general consensus across social media, across forums like the BBS, people have sort of got the similar views there. So the 4 players I've gone with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, James McArthur, Andros Townsend, and of course Wilfried Zaha. So I might as well start with Wan-Bissaka. Obviously, like he does week in, week out, basically making the opposition players look very ordinary just by completely shutting them out of the game, dealing with them very well, and essentially stopping anything that got in his way. So just for the plain fact that Wan-Bissaka defended so well, even though it is a team that was almost relegated and is now subsequently relegated, even though that was the case, they've got some players who can hit us on the break. So the fact that Wan-Bissaka dealt with them really well individually is why I've put him forward for the award. And like I've said already, there are other players I could have put on here, but for that defensive contribution is why I've put Aaron in here. Now, of course, James McArthur, obviously you can't really, you've got to look at the stats, and obviously he got an assist in this game, so for that alone, you've got to give him credit, because we scored 3 goals. All of the goals were very good quality, but you've also got to look at what happens beforehand. And certainly the 3rd goal we scored from Andros Townsend, great assist from McArthur in terms of keeping hold of the ball, letting Townsend making a run, and then offloading the ball to him so he can carry the ball down that right hand side. So obviously, yes, McArthur was done really well in that aspect, but aside from the assist he got, which of course was really important to us getting that 2-goal lead at that point in the game, it was all down to just his hard-working ethics in the game. The fact that he was chasing down every ball, and even though, because we were playing a 2-man midfield, there was a lot more pressure on him to run around and, basically cover a lot more area. So the fact that he in particular was working hard, as well as obviously playing that assist over the line, was really what was impressive for me. And like I've said already, there are other players I could put in here, but just for that work ethic, the fact that he just carried on basically like a ball, essentially you could say, just running around, keep grinding out, carrying on doing what he's doing in the midfield, is something that certainly did impress me. So for McArthur, hard working effort, that tenacity in the midfield, as well as the fact that he got a fantastic assist for Townsend by obviously playing the ball forward. And also you've got to consider the clearance off the line as well. So not only was he doing well in midfield, but defensively, getting back on the line and making that fantastic clearance from close range off the line was also great to see. Obviously, Andros Townsend got both a goal and an assist, so right away he's going to be on the shortlist. But actually, just much like McCarthy, in terms of his work ethic, it was absolutely sort of 110% in this game, because if you take the goals and you take the assist out of the game, whenever we were hitting Cardiff on the counter-attack, we'd get the ball to Townsend, he'd run at them, he'd try and put balls into the box. So aside from his goal contributions in the game, just his work ethic and that sort of attacking intent he showed in the game is something certainly that I was impressed with. And it was nice to see him actually come into a game sort of getting back to his best in terms of the way he was playing, and it was nice to see him actually get a reward for that, obviously with the assist for the first goal, obviously getting the ball out wide on the left, putting the ball on the plate for Zaha to obviously score. Obviously Zaha done his magic, but Townsend was the guy who got the ball there, and obviously scoring his own goal himself. Once again, McCarthy released him, run about 35 yards, cut inside, and obviously shot, and it came off the post. So not only was his overall attacking play good, but also his goal contributions. His goal was well taken, and obviously the assist as well from getting the ball from the left into the centre was also great to see. And I suppose he said during the week he wants to add more goals to his game. He done what he said he needed to, got the goal and also got an assist. So once again, Townsend, great attacking contribution in the game there. And obviously our final player is Wilfried Zaha. Obviously the first thing to talk about is the goal he scored. Once again, the assist coming from Townsend, but just that skill and trickery to get past one player, drag the ball one way to obviously fool the defender and the goalkeeper, then quickly drag the ball the other way and then just fire it or scuff it, whichever way you look at it, into the bottom corner was obviously great to see. And when you consider he was getting booed throughout the whole game, he took it in his stride. Basically, he was just running the defenders ragged, kept getting in behind, kept running at them, and obviously him and Townsend were changing wings, which made it more difficult for Cardiff to deal with. So the fact that he was just obviously scored the goal, which was great, but the fact that just like Townsend, his overall attacking play was fantastic. Just seeing him run at the back four, run at the fullbacks in particular, was obviously great to see. And when you consider recently he's been playing slightly further forward in a more central role, this game was him going back to his old self, playing out wide, and he seemed to enjoy it, just having that freedom to run at the fullback. So obviously I've put him forward because of the goal he scored, but also much like Townsend, just that attacking contribution. But like I've said already, obviously all of these players do deserve credit, and there are other players I might have missed out who you may think deserve to go on my four-man shortlist. But like I've said already, Aaron Wan-Bissaka obviously down to his defensive work, McCarthy for the assist he got, and obviously just that hard-working ethics he sort of had in the midfield. Obviously Townsend for firstly getting the assist for the first goal, then getting the goal or the third goal for Palace, and then obviously just his overall attacking play throughout the game. And then once again for Zaha, got the first goal for Palace, but also that attacking work was fantastic in the game. Now, like I said already, do comment below with your thoughts who you think should win the Man of the Match award. But like I've said, this was actually quite a difficult one for me, only because there were just good performances across the field. But I'm going to give it to Andros Townsend, so congratulations Andros, you don't get a trophy or certificate, but you do get my sincere congratulations on what was a solid performance from you. And for me personally, it all goes down to the fact that yes, he worked hard, which all three of the other players did, but the thing that just made him upper class is the fact that he worked hard, but he also got the assist in the first place, as well as having the goal. So the fact that he worked hard and got the 2 goal contributions is why I've put him forward for the award. And that's something we like to see from Townsend, but it was nice to see him actually finally execute it in terms of having that tenacity, having that skill, using his pace to run at defenders. It was nice to see him actually do that, and it obviously combinating in him getting both an assist and a goal in the game. So now you've heard my match report, player rankings, and my man of the match. That concludes this week's podcast. Now I've got interviews with Roy Hodgson, Wilfried Zaha and Andros Townsend following the game.
Congratulations on another great away performance. This team is brilliant on the road.
I think we knew how they were going to play today, and we just played to our strengths really, and glad we managed to get the win.
Slightly different role to you today than usual, out wide in the midfield 4, but it worked really well, didn't it? Do you have licence to attack a lot, all 4 of you?
I'm out wide, so that's okay for me, and obviously me, Michy, Jordan, Andros, we understand each other, so obviously it just made sense, and it worked well really, us together.
Yeah, talk us through your goal. You hit it really well.
I think I just played it out to Andros, and I thought when he was out there, obviously they're kind of big in defence, so a ball over the top, I doubt it would have reached one of our players, so I just kind of hung back a bit. And when he cut it back to me, I thought, let me take a step the other way and try and reverse it the other way, because I saw the keeper. As soon as I took that step, the keeper kind of went that way too, so I thought, let me try and reverse it, see what happens, and obviously I managed to score.
And then Andros Townsend finished them off. A little bit different for him. Bottom corner goal. He said he scuffed it, but he shouldn't
Yeah,
have
he
said
did. To be honest, he normally Andros scores nothing but screamers really, but today he scuffed it. But they're all goals. That's what I told him. So yeah, that's another one on his list.
I've always wanted to do this. I'm almost a proper post-match reporter now. There's your Premier League Man of the Match trophy.
Thank you very much, man. I'm glad to get it.
Andros, another entertaining away win. The whole team must be really happy.
Yeah, we're pleased. On one hand, it was a good attacking performance. We created loads of chances. We took one or two of our chances. We still have a long way to go. I think we need to manage the game better. When we went 2-1 up, we gave them too many chances. And on another day, we could have been punished. But we'll take the 3 points, another 3 points away from home, and try and go back to Selhurst and end the season on a high.
Really attacking lineup today, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I don't know why that was. We played them at Selhurst. I think it was either end of December, beginning of January, and they made it very difficult for us. They got men behind the ball, so we tried to counteract that and play with 2 forwards and 2 out-and-out wingers. And I think at times on the break we were very good. We got numbers in the box, and yeah, we made that count today with the goals we scored, and we got the 3 points that I feel like we deserved.
Let's talk about your goal. Nominated for 3 goal of the season contenders. I reckon that would have pushed not one of your own ones out, but maybe one of someone else's out.
Yeah, it was a nice goal. As the game went on, we got more and more space on the break. Yeah, and we knew eventually we were going to get the 3rd goal. It was just a matter of remaining patient, waiting for the right pass, the right shot. Yeah, and thankfully it was me that got that 3rd goal and get I think my 5th Premier League goal of the season, my 8th goal in all competitions. And yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm happy to start contributing again, and hopefully I can add to that tally next Sunday.
It wasn't classic Townsend 'cause he didn't go top corner. What made you go bottom corner on that side?
To be honest, I didn't strike it cleanly. I mishit it.
Don't say that. You meant to hit it off the post.
Yeah, no, I didn't strike it cleanly, but one of those, if you strike that cleanly, the keeper guesses and makes a great save. So if you scuff it a tiny bit, I've not seen it back, but it felt like a tiny scuff and it goes in. So yeah, I'm not complaining. It's another one to the tally.
Another fantastic away result. How's everyone feeling after that one?
Yeah, very happy, because every victory in this league is something to be well and truly celebrated. And coming here today, the odds were to some extent stacked against us. We're playing against a team that are fighting for their lives and really knowing that their only chance of survival is to beat us. So we were ready, if you like, for a bit of a barnstorming effort from Cardiff that we knew we'd have to first of all counter and ensure that didn't have any damaging effect on us. And in the same time, we had to really try and ensure that we showed the composure on the ball when we won it back, to ask a lot of questions of them. And I thought that's exactly really what we did. Our defending was solid throughout, some good defensive performances. And yet when we got the ball, I thought we looked very, very dangerous all the time. And, you know, for our 3 goals, we created at least a dozen pretty clear-cut goal chances. And, you know, they were indebted to their defence and their goalkeeper in particular for keeping it down to 3.
Started the game with two strikers and 2 out-and-out wide players. Was there a different approach tactically to this game to others recently?
Well, I mean, the fact is, your approach depends upon the personnel, and as you rightly say, you know, when you got Wilf and Andros on the wings, and in one game, and you got Max and Mako on the other hand, they're different players, they're different types of players. But in terms of what we're trying to do, it doesn't change enormously. But Wilf has been playing up front in the last couple of games alongside Benteke, very much as a front 2. Today I decided that I wanted to give Michy, Batshuayi and Jordan Ayew a chance to show what they could do as a front 2, and that meant, of course, Wilf and Andros going into the wider positions, which I thought might weaken us to some extent in terms of our compact defending in the midfield. But in fact, both of them did a very, very good job, and luckily we had such domination of the ball that it didn't affect us negatively at all.
And then now next week at Bournemouth, there still is something to play for. It's kind of a shootout for 12th place, but with a chance of 11th if other results go away.
Yeah, but West Ham, they just won 2-2 on the bounce, and one of them at Tottenham. Tottenham haven't done us any great favours recently, losing at home to West Ham, and then of course today in the 92nd minute, you know, conceding that goal at Bournemouth. You know, had Bournemouth just taken 1 point, it would have made our life that little bit easier too. But we've done our job. That's the most important thing. You know, we've won at the Arsenal. We've kept Everton to a 0-0 in a game where we weren't at our best, and we've had a really good performance and won today. So, again, that's 7 points out of 9 at this stage of the season. That's something we've got to be very, very happy with, because whenever you can take 7 points out of 9 in this league, you're playing like a top 4 team.
So there you have it. Now you've heard what Roy Hodgson, Wilfried Zaha and Andros Townsend had to say after the game. That concludes this week's podcast for the game against Cardiff. But make sure to come out next week for a post-match review for the game against Bournemouth. So thanks for listening, and remember to up the Palace.